Hi, and welcome to week 3 of the Golden Aces Nation podcast, along with the Hall of Fame voice of the Golden Aces, Scott Allen. I'm Kyle Peach. Thanks for tuning in yet again here this week. We've got lots in store. We'll recap last week's Mount Carmel football game at home against Effingham. We've got the preview of the conference opener with Robinson on Saturday afternoon. We've got lots of scores and schedule updates for you. We've got an interview with Hunter Fuller, the president of the Mount Carmel Sports Boosters,
Mhm.
coming up about a big fundraiser where you can help Golden Aces athletics out. And we're going to go back into the archives through Scott's memory and brain and find awesome story from basketball seasons years gone by, right?
That's so right. Hey, I want to send out a big good luck and and hope things worked out well for all the farmers in the area. I know I
Yeah.
saw a lot of traffic, farm implements going to and fro, a lot of work on the fields, especially in southern Lawrence County today. So everybody's trying to get out ahead of the weather, I know, to get an early start. So the best of luck to you all. And while we have got the subject, since we're also on Facebook. We can, how about this for a little promotion? Send us a picture of you on your tractor. And we know a lot of Golden Aces fans watch the games and listen to the games while they're in the cab during harvest season and planting season for that matter, too. But I know you're busy right now, and probably by this weekend with the rain, there may not be a lot of planting in the field. So just take a picture of you standing next to your whatever implement you've got and looking forlorn because you can't get in the fields because they're wet. Who knows? But just send us a picture and send it to our Facebook page, and we'll be sure to mention your name and plug away. So let's just we can line up a few pictures before next week.
There you go. If you're an old Aces player and you still have your helmet, throw it on in the cab of the tractor. Do something fun with
There
that.
you go.
That'll be fun. So sounds good. And a lot of farmers out. I was following two combines back to back from Owensville to Mount Carmel today, so we know they're out and about. Be safe, everybody, and happy harvest time.
Yep.
With some rain on the way, finally, it looks like for the weekend. So we'll talk about the impact that's going to have on the game with Robinson. But first, let's go back and talk about the Aces game, the home opener from Mount Carmel last week, Scott, against Effingham. The score was very, very close, unlike week one, but we also saw kind of some week one type mistakes out of this young team in that game as well.
Yeah, we really didn't see a lot of that in week one. Do you remember that opening drive against Gibson Southern? This extremely young team with one starter back on offense from last year, and yet we marched down the field, took 8.5 minutes off the clock, and went, well, within 1/2 yard of going 80 yards for a touchdown. And I was just floored at the time about how relatively flawless we were, mistake free. And one thing is about kitty core teams, and that eventually that catches up with you. We really saw more of that in week two of the kind of typical mistakes, logistics, setup, procedure calls, things of that nature that you'd expect from a young team. We saw more of that in week two than we did in week one, believe it or not. So we hopefully we've gotten through that phase, and now we can begin to build on the successes that we've had to play here in the early portion of the season. Hopefully, we can clean all that up for week three.
Yeah, 6 penalties against the Aces in that game against Effingham, but no fumbles, no
Yeah.
interceptions, no turnovers. So you accentuate the positive. And Mount Carmel did have a pretty decent day on the ground, 32 carries, 212 yards, 3 touchdowns. We were able to ultimately keep pace with Effingham. It was 20-6 at halftime, and it became a 26-22, 20-6 at halftime, and then a 26-22 final score. The leading rusher for the Aces was Elliott Acree, 9 carries, 109 yards. Shane Metter, 9 carries for 53 and 2 scores. And the new guy, the Mr. Kling, he had 10 carries for 35 yards. Tobias Phillip, 3 for 11. And Eki Militoni, 1 carry for 4 yards. No pass completions on the day, so all the Aces' yards came on the ground.
Yeah, and Jackson Kling's going to turn into a real wild card. He's got a different kind of running style. Of course, he wants to bulwark his way to the yards, and he's got a big body, so he's fully capable of doing that. And we can bring him in certain situations. And we used him a lot last week. Really, the first week we've used him a ton, and I expect more of that as well too. We can end up with kind of a three-headed monster back there on the ground, and then when we do elect to pass, as we begin to perfect that. That's going to mean that much more on offense for the Aces.
Yeah, and Scott, one of the things too that I think I've seen a little bit of comments on from Aces fans, we're going to have to find a way to flip the field position game, the game inside the game a little bit. Obviously, we're not moving the ball probably as far down the field as we would like in certain situations, and then we're looking for more consistency from the punting game. Those things are going to come in time as the youngsters develop into the players that we need in those facets of the game. But certainly that's something that I think is probably one of the most concerning things about this team to this point.
Yeah, and I think that has to do with youth again too. It's hard for us to put together a 14 play drive or whatever and not have a mistake or two along the way. Of course, that leads to another point. We don't have the luxury of making mistakes. So we're not an instant pop over the top team. We have to grind it down the field, and that means we have to continually do things well and be flawless in terms of mistakes on a given play. It's hard enough to make 14 straight running plays work if you're going to march down the field without enough mistakes to keep you from going 10 yards. That's a challenge in itself. Then, when we keep knocking ourselves back 5 or 10 yards, and especially if it's a third down when we have a penalty, that really kills those drives. So, until we begin to that our offense evolves and we begin to have some more options. If we're going to be a running team, then we have to be, very efficient, and we just can't afford to make mistakes, especially with this young team, until they get a little bit better at what they're doing. And the nice thing about this is going to be a completely different team by week 6 or 7 than it is now. It's going to get better every week, as a matter of fact. And of course, it'll have to, because here we're in the conference now. There's no turning back. This is how we get to the playoffs. We've got to get the wins in the conference and preferably win the championship and get the automatic bid and go from there. But again, that's the deal with this offense. We've just got to continue to churn down the field, begin to take bigger chunks as we get better line play, as those young kids up front begin to assert themselves too in that area. So we're going to be okay, but it's a kind of a slow start, as you might imagine, with a team as devoid of returnees as this team is.
Well, Scott, I think too, a lot of people are going to say we're being negative, and that's not the case here. It's not what I'm trying to be. There's so many positives that we've seen growth from week one to week two with a young team. A lot of folks didn't give us much of a shot against Effingham coming in after seeing what the score was against Gibson Southern, and ultimately it's less than a one-score game in essence. One more 6-point score, we win that ball game
Yeah.
at the Snake Pit last Friday night.
Well, and I don't think we're being negative at all. I mean, the fact is, I can't remember being as positive after a 42-6 loss that we were opening night, because of what we did at the very beginning of the game. We said while we were fresh, we were Gibson Southern's equal on that drive, and did we have the longest drive of the night in that
I
game?
think so.
Uh,
Not what, 80
we
yards, 79.75 yards.
Yeah, and certainly time wise, we took 8.5 minutes off the clock. So yeah, that wasn't being negative at all. Now the rest of the game went from that, but again, we've got a very young team, and it's going to be very small incremental improvements every week. This isn't going to come overnight. We're not going to be we're the second ranked team in the state by week 3. It's just not going to happen this year. We have too many new kids, more than I can ever remember. As a team with the fewest starting or returning starters and the youngest team that I've ever seen in probably my 49 years doing football, 45 in Mount Carmel. I mean, we just don't have the numbers. So I think we're doing very well. We're fine. It can be maddening it a little bit. And last week we saw in week 2 mistakes that probably we could have got out of our system in week 1, but it didn't happen that way. That's what makes football and all sports such cool endeavors, is you just never know what's going to happen, especially with this team. So we made mistakes in week 2, and we'll try to clean them up now in week 3. We won't clean them all up. We'll still make mistakes. Kids are being aggressive. They're trying to get off the ball and get going on a play, and they're still going to make some mistakes. But we're going to get better. We're going to be fine. We'll be able to put the passing game in a little bit more too, because we're going to catch a lot of teams asleep in their defensive backfields, because all they think we're going to do is run the football. So that's going to give us a lot of options when we get that far to begin to put that passing game into effect and our different options. And the coaches, they have very little of this offense installed this year. Coaches never have the offense ready in week one. It's always even veteran teams, they're still putting things in late in the season. Except with this bunch, it's a slower grind. I mean, you literally start with X's and O's with this bunch this year. Last year, we had the fortune of we were already mid to late season form in week one. And the coaches could put things in they wouldn't dare try with a young team. So all things considered, no, I think there's plenty to be positive for. I think based on what we saw in week one, in week two, that could be conceived to be more on us for that one because we just made a lot of mistakes, which we just can't make really ever, but you sure can't make them in week two when you're an extremely young ball club and you're prone to mistakes against a much bigger school. And boy, that was a nice little offense. Effingham had that quarterback was something. They didn't need to throw the ball very much, but when they did, it was very efficient. So no, I'd say we're not being negative at all. It's just, hey, we're wanting these kids to learn and get going. So do the coaches, so do we, so do the fans, and we're going to get better.
Yeah, Effingham ultimately ends up with over 100 yards more of offense. They ran 23 more plays than the Aces ran during that game and had 21 first downs to our 7. But yet, the Aces, the young team, outmatched on the statistics in most categories in that game, had it down to a one-score game by the end of the night. So,
Yeah.
this is a scrappy bunch, and it's going to be fun to watch them progress. As Michael Brewer told us in the preseason, it's not going to be about where are we in week one and week two. It's where are we going to be in week 8 and week 9 as we're building toward the playoffs in week 10. Speaking of Michael Brewer, you want to hear from him right
Yes,
now?
let's do
Let's
that.
do it. His post-game comments following that loss to Effingham.
We just made too many mistakes in the first half, and got ourselves kind of behind the 8 ball there. And we've talked about that now. We talked about the scrimmage week. We talked about it after week 1. We can't have the mistakes. We can't be slow starters.
And Dunston he was advertised.
Yeah, fantastic running back. I don't know that we'll see a better one. Big kid, runs hard. And again, when he, I thought we did a really good job of not giving up the big play. Now there were times where it was just a little bit too easy to drive it on us, or again, just things that we got to fix. We got to coach these kids and get things fixed and correct some stuff. And we'll do that. So we'll keep working at it. And, we show flashes at times of doing the things we need to do. We got to do them more consistently.
A couple times when you had to move the ball down the field, you did, and you went to Jackson Kling a lot more in that second half too, and he just kept pounding the ball for us.
Yeah, it was just, we got to get Elliott a break occasionally, you know what I mean? So he's kind of captaining the defense, and then we roll with him on offense until he needs a break. So Jackson did an excellent job stepping in and filling in where he was needed and running the ball hard, yeah. So both of those guys did a really good job tonight, I thought. Elliott had a couple of those that popped and were big runs. Tobias had that big run early, and man, that's again when we talk about shooting ourselves in the foot.
Yeah.
That would have been such a big deal to have the field flipped, have the opportunity to score there in the first half, and it's called back on a hold. So, just again saying those guys ran the ball well. Getting off topic here.
Well, but you were talking about flipping the field. Boy, we came so close to. We sort of started to get that done, but it just seemed to take forever to even get to that point.
Yeah, it felt like the whole first half we just couldn't get out of our own territory and get the field flipped. We couldn't get anything going to do it, and that would have been an opportunity to do that. And so that again, it just goes to the mistakes, right? That we have to get rid of them. We got to clean them up. We got to fix them. And so that's just one example of one that really kills you.
Yeah. Well, Coach, LIC play awaits. We open a week from tomorrow, I guess, at Robinson.
Yeah. So we're gonna have to keep working here, and we're gonna have to play our best football. There's not a team on our schedule that we better come ready to play. So we have a lot to prove and a lot to improve on, and so we got to be locked in this week, and we got to coach them well, and we got to practice well, and we got to be ready to go.
That was Aces coach Michael Brewer after the game last week. Of course, Effingham rolled rolled is not the right word, but 26-22 victory. They earned the victory, and Mount Carmel now enters the LIC play at 0-2, and that brings us to the conference. Every year, obviously the way the conference is set nowadays, nobody plays a conference game until week 3, so we don't know a lot about each other at this point. We probably can surmise more about Robinson because they played one game against an opponent that we played against. They played Effingham in week one. So possibly we could begin to extrapolate some things on Effingham. I'm not ready to do it with this young ball club that we've got. I would have been easily able to do it last year. We had a veteran ball club. We had everybody back. We knew what we had in Blaine Sisson and the running backs and the skill backs and everything else. So this is a new bunch. I would like to think, I hope the LIC is tougher, but I always hope it's tougher because as a league, we got to get collectively better in the playoffs. Mount Carmel kind of carries the water in the postseason and has for the 3 years they've been in this conference. And we'd like to see more postseason wins, have this league collectively get a little tougher. I mean, we may not necessarily want it this year, but we do. But yes, we do because it's going to make us a better team too as we get better. So basically what I'm saying is it's kind of a wild card in week one of the conference season. We've heard a lot about Robinson. They're scoring more. What do we know? Do we know much about their defense? They let up a lot of points in the opening game. So, Lawrenceville, we knew they were tough last year. Casey, hey, they came with an eyelash of flipping us an upset in that game. We only won by 3 points, I think, last year in week 7. So, as always, the neat thing about the beginning, this is another opening night. Here we are in week 3, opening weekend, I should say, this Saturday. We play at Robinson. So we're all kind of going into an unknown. We really don't know what the other teams have. Again, we can guess a little bit and begin to have an idea, but we're going to know a lot more after week 1. And so, again, a young squad that we have, we may be the most different looking squad of anybody in the conference going into this year. We'll be completely different than what we were last year. So and anybody has taken last year's scouting reports and basing anything about their team based on what they saw out of us last year, they might as well just throw that out the window because we're a different ball club than we were last year. Everybody probably knows that by now. All the coaches, either they've talked or seen video by now. But the fact is now it's time to put it on the field. We're not going to score the amount of points we did last year. We scored 45 or 50 about every week in the LIC last year. We're not going to be that kind of ball club. If we're going to churn down the field in methodical style, we may not run more plays than a lot of teams this year, all said and done. If they're throwing the ball and checking up, we know Robinson likes to throw the ball. There's a distinct possibility they may run twice as many plays as us if they're doing that. Now, they may all be incomplete passes. They may have to run 50 plays to our 20 to get anything on the scoreboard at all. But that's probably not going to be the last time that kind of stat rears itself that we've seen already in terms of numbers of plays. But anyway, so again, it's a new season. Here we are, season number 2 already. Beginning in the LIC.
Yeah, and Scott, with Robinson, just a couple of notes on some players to watch in this ball game. You mentioned the fact that they do pass a lot. They've passed 45 times. They've rushed 43 times, so a little more pass than rush.
Mm-hmm.
Their quarterback is Reese Johnson, 23 of 43. They had another kid throw 2 passes and a pick. Johnson's been picked 3 times, 4 touchdowns, 366 yards through the air, 182 yards, just a 4.2 yard per carry average. Their leading rusher is also Reese Johnson, the quarterback, 16 of 130 for 136 yards and a score. Only 1 touchdown on the ground, 4 through the air for Robinson. Their leading receivers are Keziah Poole, number 4, and Blake Green, number 6, both averaging right around 150 yards per contest. One interesting note, they've scored 5 touchdowns. They all came in week 1 in a wild shootout against Effingham where they lost 54-30, but they were shut out last week by Taylorville 34-0. So a little bit of inconsistency with the Robinson team. The Maroons do like to throw, and there's rain in the forecast for Saturday, and that could be a big factor.
Yeah, it could be a big factor. Usually that kind of favors the running team, but not always. I mean, the passing team has the luxury, the receivers have the luxury of knowing where the ball is going to be. They just have to get there, and they can make that catch in sloppy conditions if they can anyway. So not to say it's automatic that the running team is going to have the edge, but the fact is running teams have to have a lot happen too, not the least of which hanging onto the football. You've got to get 4 or 5 guys blocking consistently through a play, as opposed to maybe just two or three, and the right two or three can make a pass play go in the range. So, yeah, it's the wet elements will probably impact Robinson more, but it doesn't always happen that way. Interesting. You mentioned that shutout last week too for the against Taylorville. Olney, right? They beat Taylorville on opening night, didn't they? And
Yeah, they
scored some
did.
points on them.
Yeah, they scored some points and they won that ball game by a lot more, really, than, I mean, obviously Robinson lost. So you'll start to look at how projections of matchups go. On paper, you compare scores to Robinson's loss to Effingham and ours. You'd favor us against Robinson. You'd favor Olney against Robinson. The Tigers are 2-0 after not winning a single game a year ago.
Yeah.
So, the conference race, Marshall's already got a win. It could be a little bit different look this year in the LIC. And speaking of the LIC, and then we're going to move past football, but Mount Carmel is riding a 22 game conference winning streak. We're 22-0 since joining the LIC, and that streak goes further. We're 91-2 against LIC teams after losing 3 straight games to now LIC teams in 1978. That's quite a record, and it's going to be a tall task for this young team to keep that kind of record intact throughout this season, but something to challenge them with, perhaps.
Something to challenge them with. That's something to wear in their hats too. So that's a goal to get through another season undefeated. They want to keep that streak going. They don't want to be the guys that let that streak up. And you can bet the rest of the LIC is chomping at the bit. They think this is their year to finally pin Mount Carmel back a little bit. There's more than one or two teams thinking they've got a shot. And I couldn't help but go back to Olney. Well, after 2 weeks, they may be the most surprised team in terms of upswing in the conference. They're scoring points. They're 2-0. They beat Mattoon, and we'll see if, I mean, Mattoon's a bigger school like Effingham. We'll see if they're Effingham's equal in terms of on the field. That those two will play eventually. But so I tell you what, the Tigers after 2 weeks, I'm going, wow, they could be the big surprise story of this year. How far up they'll go from last year at 0-9 remains to be seen, but they have all the makings of the big surprise of the year in the conference.
Will be fun to watch the Tigers, at least until the Aces play them coming up later in the season. That'll be fun. Switching gears a little bit, staying, of course, talking all things Golden Aces. Best wishes to the Golden Aces Sports Boosters as they have embarked on another fundraising Ace of Spades contest. The Ace of Spades, of course, is a drawing platform where you can purchase tickets to own basically a card. You pick which number you want on the board, and if your name is drawn and then they reveal your number that you've chosen and the Ace of Spades is back there, you get the winner's share of the jackpot. Yep. It started off with a $5,000 jackpot. There was no winner. We're taping this on a late Wednesday night. There was no winner this morning. So the jackpot has grown now to $5,435. They will draw every Wednesday morning live on WSJD Radio. So make sure to get your tickets. You can get those tickets online through the Golden Aces Sports Boosters Facebook page. You can also buy them in person at Stymie's Rest at West Berwick or at the WSJD Radio Studios. And we hope this becomes one of those Queen of Spades, Ace of Spades, Queen of Hearts, whatever they call them, drawings that go through the roof and bring lots of people to town and hundreds of thousands of dollars to the Sports Boosters organization.
And Hunter Fuller's a great guy, young guy, taking over the challenges of the boosters. He'll be president for a long time in the Boosters Club, I'm sure, because he's doing a great job of this promotion. And so we had a chance to catch up with him last week at halftime of the football game and talk a little bit about his role, the Sports Boosters, and about the promotion in general.
Yes, so we have the big fundraiser for the year for us is the Ace of Spades contest. So starting up again this Wednesday. Every week we'll have a drawing on the WSJD morning show at 8:30. So you can buy tickets for that every week, either online, sells out there too. You can also pick up tickets at WSJD's station. So,
well, I will say one thing: those totals have gotten pretty high over the years on that thing, haven't they?
They have. And this one, so the last one actually started out at $2,500 for the winners, and we're starting it out at $5,000 this time. So we hope to
So you're seeding it at 5,000 to start with, huh?
Starting at 5,000 this year. So hope to build it up a little quicker that way.
Yeah, and just remind people the kind of things that this money is going to be used for.
Yeah, so what the boosters does really is supports the high school athletics. So last year we were able to help with the football team with a couple charter buses, pay some of those expenses. We were able to help every team with some meal expenses, just help with the end of year meal that goes with the team. So teams can also request funds from us, then we can decide if we want to help out with those things too. So
yeah, I mean, a wide program, a sports program of Mount Carmel continues to grow over the years in terms of teams. And look at all the teams you've got to be concerned about, including the Lady Aces golf team, the dynasty themselves, and they're going places in the postseason.
Right. Yeah, we totally expect them to hopefully go back to state again this year and have a really good chance at winning the state title again. So plan to help them out when they go up there this year.
Yeah. Now, Hunter, how long have you been with the Boosters now?
So it just came up on the year mark. So started last year at this time.
And so you took over for Thomas Allen, right?
I did.
Okay.
I did.
And so how's it been so far in your tenure? Huh?
Well, it's good so far.
Yep.
Enjoyed just being able to help out with the sports team. So
yeah, tell us about now the Boosters, when they meet, et cetera, and who's on and how many people on the board, et cetera.
Yeah, so we have 5 board members now. We meet every Friday, which any Boosters member is more than welcome to come out to Stymies for lunch. Have the coaches, so have the in-season coaches. So right now Michael Brewer's coming out talking to us, and also the athletic director, Kyle Buss. So anybody that is a Boosters member is more than welcome to come out to Stymies on Fridays at noon. And then also if you're not a member and would like to join, we have...
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
So, what do we do?
Yeah, so it's $35 for an individual or $50 for a family. And if you did not receive a letter and would like to join, we would be more than welcome to have you, or be more than happy to have you, and with us through the Sports Boosters Facebook page as well.
All right. Hunter, great job so far in starting, and congratulations even as this kicks off because it's going to be a big fundraiser. They always are. It's a lot of fun, a lot of interest. Somebody wants to win the big bucks, and meanwhile you get the benefit of, and the boosters get the benefit of helping our athletic programs. And so for that, we're grateful too. So thanks for taking it on, by the way.
Of course. Thank you, Scott.
Hunter Fuller got the Sports Boosters in great shape. And again, membership is strongly encouraged from all of us at the podcast for you to join the Sports Boosters, or at least buy your tickets for the Ace of Spades drawing. Let's get into some scores around Aces Nation involving the other sports. Since we last talked to you last Thursday, the volleyball team went 2-3 at the Olney Invite, and congrats to Sarah McCorkle, who picked up her 1,000th career save in that career assist, I beg your pardon, or 1,000th career assist in that contest. In that invite in Olney. Meanwhile, the Aces also picked up a big win at home on Tuesday against Vincennes Reveille in straight sets, both 25-18. The Lady Aces are home tonight as we release this on a Thursday against Marshall in Little Illini play, and they'll be at Sisney on Monday early next week. So that's
the
what
soccer
volleyball's
Aces
going on. Yeah.
Yep, I was going to say the soccer Aces are a lot like the football team. They're very shy on seniors now. The soccer Aces have gone all the way. They're devoid of seniors. At least the football team has 5. Soccer teams even in a worse shape. So they're desperate for leadership. They've got a lot of kids wanting to take over some of those roles. And so and unfortunately they're also battling injuries too, which isn't helping matters any at this early part of the year. They lost to 7-1 to Olney, and they lost to Massac County. Boy, that Massac County Patriots club has been very good in soccer the last few years. Well, of course, Olney always is, but they lost to the Patriots 6-0. But they beat Robinson in the home opener 1-0. So how about that? The Aces get a win with this young squad without a senior. They're at home against Mount Vernon on Thursday. They're at Harrisburg Saturday, and at Robinson on Monday. Holy mackerel, what a stretch for the soccer Aces in the next 6 days.
Yeah, we can say the season is in full swing at this point, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, looking at the Lady Aces tennis team, they lost to Newton, I believe that was yesterday, 6-3. Their upcoming schedule at Robinson on this Thursday, at Heron on Saturday, at Carbondale next Wednesday. So taking a tour of deep southern Illinois, will the Lady Aces tennis team early next week.
So let's talk about Aces boys golf, shall we? Here they were fifth out of 14 teams at the Alney Invite on Friday. Colin Kelsey was eighth overall in that competition. They are home to versus Hamilton County on Thursday. The Aces are at the Mattoon Invitational this weekend. They're at Robinson on Monday, and they're home versus Fairfield on Tuesday. They're at Marion and maybe playing Cocopelli again next Wednesday. Boy, one of the toughest courses in Southern Illinois.
Yeah, and they just keep playing, don't they? Thursday, weekend,
Well, they got to get in
Monday,
every day. The
Tuesday,
season's over before
Wednesday.
you know it. Yeah.
Right. They're every day but Sunday, I think they're playing. Meanwhile, the girls' golf team played at Olney on Wednesday night. And how about this? They're still undefeated, but against some stiff competition. The Lady Aces with a 150 to win the team competition. Effingham St. Anthony, who always seems to kind of
Yep.
be nipping right at the heels of the Aces, just 19 strokes back at 169. And Effingham, the public school, the Flaming Hearts, at 182. And this may be the biggest news of all. No Lady Ace was the match medalist. The
Wow.
medalist came from Mattoon, of all places,
Mm.
who actually tied Zimmy Moore at 34 for medalist honors, but won the honor on a tiebreak. So there you go, a little competition finally for your Lady Aces golf team.
And that's a pretty solid little roundup of Aces activities here in the last few days and the schedule ahead.
Yeah, we've got one more thing for you here. Cross country. This is late in.
Oh, I
They
missed
were
that.
they were at Lawrenceville yesterday. I believe that was Tuesday actually. And Matt McCarty, the coach, sent us this in on Tuesday. Freshman Isaiah Glenn led the way for the Aces boys, coming in fifth out of 11 runners with a time of 21:30. And in the girls' race, freshman Zoe Randall led the way, third place out of 12 runners with a 26:16 time. And best of luck to them. They'll be at the Olney Invite next up on September 21st.
All right,
That,
there
I
you go.
think, is our complete rundown of Aces events. And as we kind of wrap things up here for this week's episode of the Golden Aces Nation podcast, it's story time, Scott. My favorite time of the podcast, my own personal reason for being involved with the podcast. I want to hear the stories, and you told me it's going to be about basketball. What do you got for us this week?
All right, here. I'm going to take out my glasses. This is off the top of the head here. There you go. You can tell I'm not wearing my cheaters. I wouldn't be able to read it. Anyway, okay. So basketball, the topic. Um, and I've got four or five here that just pop into my head every time I just say a sports name. But let's go with a story. Uh, Obviously, I've done Mount Carmel games for a long time. This will be the 45th year for basketball as well as football. So I covered Charleston, Illinois for 4 years. I went to school at Eastern, got a job at the local commercial station, and really started when I was still in college. So I did 4 years of Charleston sports as well. There's been other teams I've done over the years. Obviously, the close proximity to Mount Carmel, I did a lot of Gibson Southern games because we would be the station that would do Gibson Southern. Um, where and when we could. Did a couple football games a year there for a while, the week one and one of the sectional games. And in basketball, we would do a few and they were playing on the same nights, things like that.
By the way, just side note, the
Mhm.
Jerry O'Brien, you and I always get into it about the Gibson Southern Jerry O'Brien stall ball basketball games,
Yeah.
and I hated it. You thought it was great.
Well, I thought it was great because it was so anti what the kids wanted to do. And the kids had to really buy into this. It was kind of a work of art in its own thing. And we can talk about that too. The Titans that year, the year I did them, really had their best year in school history, other than the opening year in '74. They went to the a semi-state and they had a number one versus two matchup with Plainfield at the Hatchet House in Washington. Now, Gibson Southern lost that game. So they didn't go to state that year, but in the process, they beat some quality teams. There was some great basketball that year was played. I'd hate to go. I'd have to list them all the stars that went to the sectional game. I've never seen as crowded and star-studded field on a high school level as they do that sectional that year they played. But yeah, they would break. I mean, there would literally be single-digit halftime scores for Gibson Southern that year. But the kids had to buy into that, and the fact that he got them to, and that's tough to do. Nobody liked it except Gibson Southern fans. Other teams couldn't stand it. It was unlike what anybody else had done. So I was loving it. It was, to me, it was a challenge. It was completely different from what kids are taught, and everything from day one in the backyard with your own goals. So to have this kind of love for the coach um, and his system, and to buy into it to the degree they did, and of course they were winning, and it's easy to buy into things when you win. But then to play at top level of the state, I mean, to make it all the way to the semi-state in Indiana, and that's before four class basketball days. So yeah, it was really amazing.
Nashville kind of did the same thing on the girls' side. Wayne Hari kind of slowed the
Yeah,
game down too. So, shot
yeah,
clock coming into high school basketball here next year, so that'll be a fun adjustment.
yeah.
Not sure how Jerry Bryan's scheme would work with that, but
No,
nonetheless,
he wouldn't like that. But
I
they've eventually gotten rid of a lot of the vestiges of the old game. I still blame Dean Smith for everything. So yeah,
there you
if he
go.
wouldn't have done that four corners, and the fact is he did it so well that nobody else could figure it out, so they couldn't beat him. So they just changed the system.
Yeah,
And that's kind of the way things work out sometimes. So,
yeah.
but anyway, so my basketball. So obviously, Mount Carmel, I've done the vast majority of basketball games, and then comes probably Gibson Southern. I didn't do a ton of Edwards County games. Usually they were covered somewhere, but I did some. But probably after that, the next team I did the most games for, believe it or not, was a little town in central Illinois, Mount Pulaski. I probably did double digit totals of games for them. So I worked at the Charleston station from 1976 to 79. They had a 16-team Christmas tournament at that time, and it continued for some time. Rick Johnson brought teams up there later on for Mount Carmel. Eventually, that tournament folded, but it was a nice little affair in the 70s. I was on the tournament committee. We'd set the pairings, and in a desperate attempt to get Charleston, which didn't have very good teams back then, to at least get them to the last day of the tournament so they would play a full four games, and the home fans would come out and spend money. That was the whole goal, get Charleston to the last game. And sometimes we intentionally stiffed them on opening night. We knew they weren't that good to get the tournament, so we'd have them lose, or we'd schedule an opponent so they would lose, but then schedule a cream puff on the game after they lost so they could keep winning and get to the last day. That was the goal, get the home team to the last day of the tournament. Probably that is a goal of every high school tournament anyway, at least as far as the home team is concerned. But nobody ever admits that. But
Kind
that's
of
what
have
we do.
a kind of have the Carmi cheerleaders win the Carmi tournament cheerleaders of the year. No,
Yeah, every year at
that
the
wasn't nice.
CIT.
That wasn't nice. But you
No, but it was
reward
pretty
the home
truthful.
team for hosting, right? There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, they won that thing probably more than they needed to.
Right.
But anyway, so what I would do, so Mount Pulaski didn't have a radio station. Oh, they had a radio station, but they didn't bring their crew down. And so every year at the Charleston tournament, I would do their games. And they were very good back then. Ed Butkovich, they were one of the top programs in the state in Class A, and when it was just two classes back then. And it was a lot of fun doing their games. So anyway, so I bring that to your attention because there's actually an NEC team that I did everything but one half of the game. I did another team in the NEC against Mount Carmel. I announced for the other team for one half of the game. And it was back in the 70s. Well, it had to be in the early 80s. I didn't get it till the 79-80 basketball season. So it was in March. And as you may remember, back when we were two classes, there were three AA schools in the NEC, Mount Carmel, Olney, and Salem. And they would play that last weekend. Meanwhile, the regionals had already been that week in the other two classes. And so everybody else in the NEC either played, lost, or in Lawrenceville's case, probably won and were still going. They were the dynasty, of course, back then. But there would be Salem and Olney and Mount Carmel, the final AA school. So invariably, Salem and Mount Carmel would play that last weekend. And one year we played at Salem. That just so happens to be the same day we were picking the NEC broadcasters basketball all conference team at the Salem Legion or somewhere, a radio station. And there were several radio stations that covered NEC teams. Not everybody in the league had a radio, but most teams did. And we would rotate through hosting the event. Well, it's the Salem's turn to host. And basketball would take a while to pick, most of the afternoon. And so we had to do the game. And really, the only two left doing games were the Salem station and us. And so we decided we were, I think one team was last and one team was next to last. So it was the battle for last. in the NEC on the final night of the regular season for everybody, for double A teams too. So we decided to spruce it up a little bit. And I went into the booth and announced for the Salem Wildcats. And the Holly boys came into the Mount Carmel. They carried the Mount Carmel broadcast. I don't know if anybody remembers this in Mount Carmel, but and I hollered and screamed for the Wildcats for a half, and they did the same for the Golden Aces. Then we switched back at halftime. So there you go. That's the only other team that I think I've announced for against Mount Carmel, probably ever. But that was during the NEC days. So that's a little basketball tidbit. But I tell you what, basketball is one of those sports. We played so many more games than football. A lot more stuff happened actually during basketball in the scheme of things. Crazy stuff. And so yeah, get me started. I got a ton of these basketball stories, but there's a couple of them for you anyway.
I'm going to keep you on the Holly Boys in Salem for just a minute because the other big fun story with those guys I know that you had was at the Hilltop, right?
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
another
There was, and I
halftime
don't know.
involvement.
Yeah, well, we were playing. And here we were again towards the end of the season. We're playing at the Hilltop this year, and it pays to kind of pay attention to your halftime breaks if you're in the radio business to know that you get a 10-minute break at halftime of high school basketball games. And I'll tell you what, it's a lot easier covering halftime in high school than college. College is
Oh,
15 minutes and it just seems interminable half the time. But high school, it's over before you know it. By the time you take a 1 minute break, you come back with a scoring summary, 2 minutes, take another break, come back and talk a little bit chit chat about the game, maybe do an interview of 3 minutes, and pretty soon you're ready for the second half. Well, anyway, I never used to take breaks. I would stay out at halftime. The particular station, Salem, would go to music or news or something at halftime because, again, the Holly Boys, just great guys. They would take a pause at the end of the first half and walk away for 10 minutes. They got a 10-minute break. And so they would do what I guess a lot of people did. They would go out and have a smoke during the halftime. They'd go outside, and sometime, well, one time in particular, they really lost track of the time. So I'm back at my position, and this is back when we were both downstairs. Both crews were downstairs before they moved the press box upstairs at the gym. And I'm kind of looking over. There's like 4 minutes to go, and the countdown clock is working now for the both teams out warming up. And I look over and I don't see anybody in the seats next to us. So I go, okay, that's fine. We take another commercial. We're 2 minutes and we're 1 minute away from halftime. I look over and there's still nobody there. And now the buzzer sounds. And now we've got the teams out and we're ready to start the second half. And I look over and there's still nobody there and they're not even coming. I look at the other side of the gym, they're nowhere to be found. And so the game is going. Well, now the problem is um, I begin to appreciate the humor in it. And so now I start laughing. And I'm having trouble controlling myself. And meanwhile, the game's going on, and we're a minute into the second half, 2 minutes in the second, and there's still no Holly Boys. And of course, I think it's funny, and being an old radio guy, and I'm laughing. Pretty soon, I can't look at the game. I've got my head ducked underneath the counter. I'm laughing so hard, and this is probably going out on the air that I can't control myself because I think it's hilarious being a radio guy. Finally, they make an appearance. They come in the doors, and it's like halfway through the third quarter. And they come on, and the way they handle it was perfect, just perfect. It's like a movie bit. They proceed to sit down, grab their headphones, and just go, "Hello, everybody. 3 minutes to go here in the third." Like nothing's happened. They don't apologize. They don't do anything. And of course, I could hear some of this, so I just am dying. So I don't know if it was worse the fact that they weren't there or that I wasn't giving our fans any play-by-play because I've lost it. I'm just laughing uproariously for probably a couple minutes on end. So I always want to apologize for the last 40 years about that little incident, but it was funny that night. So you always got to keep track of your breaks a little bit. So I have no idea what led to that, but what led to that enormous break. But it was funny. So there's another announcer's basketball story for you.
Oh, those glory days of the NEC broadcasters, I tell
Yes.
you, that was fun. Well, we can't wait to hear another story next week. Let's go call win number one of the year for the Golden Aces at Robinson on Saturday. Keep that LIC winning streak intact. We'll get it done this weekend. I like our chances Saturday. I think it's going to turn out our way.
Yeah, yeah, and really, I'll just be looking for improvement too from our team. We'll make progress. We're gonna get over the hump with these guys. Mount Carmel kids always do, um, But again, I can't remember the last time the cupboard's been as bare as it has been, and so these kids will figure it out. They'll get her going, and they'll bounce back and be very representative. And I think this is still a playoff team when it's all said and done. So let's just see what happens now in the LIC.
That should be good. It starts on Saturday, 2 o'clock, the kickoff up in Effingham. Robinson, they're not in the league, at least not yet. Robinson on Saturday, 2 o'clock. Bring your poncho and join us. We'll have it on the radio on WSJD, the live stream on the News Channel 15 YouTube page again. It should be fun. We'll see you in Robinson on Saturday. Have a great week, Golden Aces Nation, and we'll talk to you again next Thursday.